Whenever a tragedy like the Gul Plaza fire happens, the first question on everyone's mind is always, how? How could this happen? Well, today we're going to dig into the official investigation that picked through the debris to find out the real story. So, what was the real cause? At first, everyone assumed it was the usual suspect, the thing we always hear about. But as the investigators started their work, a completely different and honestly a much more human story started to come out. Okay, so let's get right to it. The common assumption, what everyone was saying, was short circuit. It makes sense, right? It's the go-to cause for these kinds of fires. But the investigation found something else entirely. Get this, the real cause wasn't some complicated electrical problem. It was something so much simpler, a single matchstick. And what's really telling is the exact wording the report used. They concluded it wasn't arson, it wasn't a deliberate act of sabotage. It was, and I quote, innocent mischief. That phrase, wow, it just perfectly captures the heartbreaking, accidental nature of how this whole disaster kicked off. So how in the world does a moment of innocent mischief turn into a massive, building-consuming fire? Well, it's a classic domino effect, a terrible chain reaction where a series of small, seemingly minor events just spiraled completely out of control. It all started with two kids just playing a game, tossing lit matches at each other. But then one of those matches missed. It landed on some flammable chemicals nearby. A shopkeeper saw it, rushed over, and thought he'd put it out. But he hadn't, not completely. That little flame reignited, and this time it found its way into the building's air conditioning system. And once it was in there, it had a superhighway to spread everywhere and fast. But here's the thing. A spark, even one that gets into the AC, is one thing. For it to become a full-blown, deadly inferno, other things had to be seriously wrong. And this is where we need to talk about the building itself, because its own flaws are what turned a terrible accident into an absolute catastrophe. Just two. In this huge shopping plaza packed with shops and people, there were only two doors that you could actually use to get in or out. Just think about that for a second. That's not a small oversight. That's a catastrophic failure in safety design. For the people trapped inside, it was an absolute nightmare. The report describes this scene of just pure chaos. People were literally having to smash down sealed doors just to try and create escape routes for themselves and to pull others out. The building wasn't just unsafe, it was a death trap, and it forced ordinary people into a desperate fight for their lives. So, once the smoke cleared and the fire was finally out, the technical experts had to come in. Their job? To assess the damage and decide what, if anything, could be done with what was left of the building. And this wasn't just a quick look around. We're talking a major coordinated effort. They brought in the Bomb Disposal Squad, the Sindh Building Control Authority, the Pakistan Engineering Council, basically all the key players you'd need for a serious technical assessment. And all of their analysis, all of their reports, came down to one official designation, Mahdoush. Now what does that mean? It's the government's way of saying the building wasn't just damaged anymore, it was hazardous. It was structurally unsound. It was a public danger. The damage was just too severe. The technical committees came to a very clear, very final conclusion. There was absolutely no way to safely repair Gul Plaza. Their recommendation was blunt and unambiguous. The entire building had to be demolished. Okay, so when you have a disaster that was made so much worse by such obvious safety failures, you have to ask the big question, whose fault was it? Who was responsible for letting things get this bad in the first place? The investigation did lead to some accountability. The municipal commissioner, a man named Afzal Zaidi, was officially removed from his job. The reason given was negligence, a failure to do his duty. And that's really where the story ends. The Gul Plaza fire is this awful combination of a simple, tragic accident and a deep systemic failure. It leaves all of us with a really important question to think about. When the investigation is over and the rubble is finally cleared away, what real lessons do we learn to make sure something like this never, ever happens again?